African Export-Import Bank, the trade finance bank for Africa.
Hello there. Welcome to the 23rd Annual General Meeting of the Africa Export-Import Bank. The theme of this year's event focuses on Africa's blue economy and how it can help boost intra-African trade on the continent and also serve as a catalyst for economic transformation in Africa. It's no surprise then that the beautiful island of Seychelles has been chosen as a venue for this year's meetings. I'm Esther Awoni. Thanks for joining us. President of the Africa Export-Import Bank, Benedict Orama, speaks on the significance of this year's theme, Africa's new economy, intra-African trade and the blue economy as catalysts for economic transformation.
We've seen how changes are beginning to happen, and we've seen the drivers of the change. And the drivers of the change bring new perspectives, and the new perspectives are represented by new economic activities, and that is why we use the word the new economy. Intra-African trade reverses the old pattern of trade between north-south. Anybody who wanted to trade in, that's international trade, would say, oh, I will export to Europe or to America, and so on and so forth. Intra-African trade changes that perspective. The narrative changes. Under the new paradigm that we're beginning to see and that is beginning to emerge, the trade is beginning to be built more and more on manufactured goods.
The island nation of Seychelles, located in the Indian Ocean, some 1,600 kilometers east of continental Africa, has built a global reputation as a pioneer of the blue economy concept. The country's Minister of Finance, Trade and Blue Economy, Jean-Paul Adam, believes Africa's blue economy is a good entry point to promote intra-African trade.
Well, the blue economy is very much, I think, an opportunity for Africa to claim ownership of its oceans and seas and water spaces. Too often, I think, in the past, a lot of these spaces are exploited more actually by third countries rather than African countries themselves. So it's an opportunity for us to really look at our resource base and make more out of it, firstly on the basis of better value addition, but also on proper branding, and creating new jobs, more opportunities for particularly African investors.
This year's general meeting and related events features a number of keynote speeches and panel discussions focused on a wide spectrum of issues including trade finance, value-added exports, industrialization, and regional integration.
Integration affects what people buy, the variety of what is on offer at the local market, how citizens move between countries, where individuals travel for leisure or to work or reside, how cost-effective it is to keep in touch, where people choose to study or look for a job, how to transfer money to family or get startup capital for a business. Regional integration, therefore, is about getting things moving freely across the whole of Africa. This means getting goods to move more easily across borders, transport, energy and telecommunication, to connect people across more boundaries, people to move freely across frontiers, and capital and production to move and grow beyond national limits.
If you just consider, by taking the small pelagic fish in Lake Victoria, for instance, and instead of drying it on the sand on the beach and taking it and lifting it up on a rack 2 inches from the sand and drying it there, you increase the price and the value between 5 and 10 times. And some of these pelagic species that are now being caught for animal feed or aquaculture, if you can develop them into human food, you again increase the value by 5 to 10 times.
Some key initiatives that have been taken recently by the government of Mauritius, the government commitment, are the introduction of a new fisheries and marine resources bill, right? And some incentives for petroleum exploration. And also, we are banking a lot on what is called the deep ocean water application, because it appears that Mauritius is along the way of an undercurrent of cold water, which can be used for powering air conditioning from deep ocean water.
You want to create the environment where institutional investors have some benefit for investing in a sector or an economy that they might not ordinarily look at. And I think in the green bond space, there have been certain incentives offered by government to promote investments in the sector. And I think a similar thing could be done in the blue bond sector, where, for example, we've seen it in some other economies, where an institutional investor supports that sector. Government provides them with incentives in the form of preference for procurement for government-related projects. That's just one particular example, but there are many things that can be done to incentivize institutional investors to obviously look favorably upon the blue economy.
It's very important to understand the challenges that global banks are facing today when it comes to complying with the regulatory requirements, because most of those approaches are regulatory driven, and it's not coming as a surprise if I tell you that it all started with the 2007-2008 crisis and the subsequent development that have made it fairly challenging today for global bank to comply with domestic regulations. We are today at a unique position. We are today at a unique position that actually makes us be bullish on the continent. That's why we're voicing out, calling for Africa not to sleep on their laurels, to do the reforms, because it's about making the reforms. It's about the reforms, making the reforms that will make those economies more attractive, more conducive for business, because it's not a good move, sir. It's not a good move seeing global bank being bearish on the continent. It's not good.
As commodity-dependent African economies struggle with the commodities price crash, former president of Afrexim Bank, Jean-Louis Ekra, says it's a blessing in disguise.
When the price of commodities are high, it's not conducive enough for African countries to really transform their economies. But now that those prices are lower, I think we are going to see more in terms of intra-African trade. To move from A to B, as you said, requires really a shift in the paradigm for most of those African countries.
One of the highlights of this year's event is a conversation with former Nigerian President Olusegun Obasanjo.
Let me take the Nigerian example of what we may now say we have done or we are doing. I strongly believe that our industrialization should be based on our commodities. The commodities that we have is what we should add value as the beginning of our industrialization. Now, what is all this structural adjustment? That's what you have to do. Structural adjustment is the way to go. And we said, well, all right, we will go that way. We went that way, and after it didn't work again, they said, oh yes, you didn't do it the way we wanted you to do it. And Joseph, I really thank you for saying that, because that's what had gone on and on and on. So where are we now? We have the like of Professor Stiglitz saying to us, yes, what he is saying indirectly is that, well, on behalf of myself and the organization and institution that I've worked for, we are sorry. And well, we should be gracious enough to accept that apology, and then also say back to them that yes, you are wrong to have misdirected us, and we also are wrong to have done some of the things that we have done wrongly. But together now, let us choose the path that is right for all of us to go on.
2001 Nobel laureate in economics, Professor Joseph Stiglitz, is one of the special guests this year. He speaks on globalization and highlights reasons why global free trade agreements are sometimes not beneficial to African economies.
You are going to have said once, when you were looking at the asymmetries regarding agricultural subsidies, that it was better to be a cow in Europe than a farmer in India. Do you still hold those views?
So the point I was making at the time was that literally hundreds of millions of people in India and Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, were living under $2 a day. And Europe's subsidies for a cow were $2 a day. And to me, the point I was trying to make was not only the obvious absurdity of that situation, but also the hypocrisy of the United States and Europe, and something which in some ways has grown even worse, because they continually talked about free trade. But when it came, in the WTO, the importance of opening up markets, but when it came to agriculture, which, remember, 70% of all those living in emerging markets in developing countries depend indirectly or directly on agriculture. When it came to agriculture, the United States and Europe refused to give up those agricultural subsidies.
Afrexim Bank believes vibrant intra-African trade relations can bring about real and structural change to African economies. However, this will involve a shift away from commodity exports to value-added exports, something many African countries are yet to achieve. We'll take a short break now and return with more highlights from the 23rd Annual General Meeting of the Africa Export-Import Bank.
African Export-Import Bank, the trade finance bank for Africa.
Africa has more oceanic space than it has land space. Afrexim Bank says this underscores the need to build a vibrant blue economy. Afrexim Bank believes that this will also help boost intra-African trade. It says that African countries that trade amongst themselves are the most industrialized, the most developed, and more resilient to external economic shocks. A trade exhibition showcasing investment opportunities in Seychelles is part of activities at this year's event. Various companies in different sectors, including fisheries, processed marine products, and financial services, are on display. Afrexim Bank President Benedict Orama is taking round the exhibition stalls. The Seychellois Minister of Investment, Entrepreneurship and Business Innovation, Michael Benstrong, says Seychelles has a lot more to offer investors.
Seychelles is not only known for tourism, we also have a vibrant fisheries sector, thriving real estate schemes, and our international financial centers. I would advise our visitors to move away from your busy schedule and to try and visit our local market, to try our local manufactured foods, fruits, and beverage. And as the saying goes in Seychelles, if you try our breadfruit, you will definitely be coming back.
The Africa Export-Import Bank disburses $15 billion annually to support African trade in various sectors. Dennis Denya, Executive Vice President, Finance Administration and Banking Services at Afrexim Bank, speaks on trade finance in Africa and how the bank is supporting enterprises. He cites Nigeria as an example.
So we are seeing proposals, firstly in the tourism, hotel and leisure sector. And we have financed a number of hotels and leisure centers across Nigeria. But we are also looking at boats. You know, people can go on the waters. We are seeing proposals in that regard. We are also seeing proposals. Just 2 minutes ago, I was talking to a cashew producer in Nigeria. We export raw cashew. There is no processing that is done. So Afrexim Bank is working with those producers to do that.
Another key highlight of this year's event is the African Leaders Roundtable on Intra-African Trade. Panelists reflect on the state of intra-African trade and how countries are tackling trade barriers.
What exactly is the reason for this low level of intra-African trade? And I would like to start with my sister again, Minister Sahara Nasser of Egypt.
Thank you very much, Cecilia. I think transportation comes in as number one, and we can see that a lot of the African countries have and governments have been very much committed in investing in infrastructure. Geographic remapping and development would only happen when there is sufficient connectivity, whether through ports, roads, railways, rivers. So we have tremendous, enormous resources in our continent, and I think it's very important that we tap on these resources.
Without peace, nothing can happen. Absolutely nothing can occur. So we have to encourage and promote peace within each individual country and in the neighboring countries. When there is peace, everything can be done. It is not a political or stability risk in the Seychelles, but a risk linked to the smallness and the small size of our market. We only have 90,000 inhabitants in the Seychelles. Any orders or any capacity to fulfill and respect an order is linked to the human resources capacity which exists in our country.
Former Nigerian President Olusegun Obasanjo and the former President of the Africa Export-Import Bank, Jean-Louis Ekere, share their views on the state of intra-African trade.
There are 4 things that are happening. Now, 20 years ago, we did not have Afrexim Bank the way they are now pushing and working as a bank for intra-African trade. That is one. Then we have our leaders. They are waking up. They are showing leadership in areas where they did not show leadership before. They are showing political will where they were a little bit timid in the past. So these are all coming together, and the coming together of all this is good for us.
You see, we all go and sign all those treaties, but still we have too many borders in Africa.
Some delegates attending the meetings this year share their thoughts on key takeaways.
One of the key takeaways was from the contributions of Professor Lin about the fact that when resources are scarce, governments need to take pragmatic decisions in terms of prioritizing. So where power is scarce, you can concentrate power allocation to industrial parks, which industrial parks will then house developments that are of particular significance to where you want to go. And of course, he also mentioned the fact that you should focus on your areas of competitive advantage. And I think that is very, very important.
The most interesting one was, I think, there were 2 actually, from Professor Stiglitz and the former Excellency President Obasanjo. I think for me those 2 stood out, especially for Professor Stiglitz. I like the fact that he was able to question some of the policies that the World Bank had been pursuing.
A lot of challenges in trade across Africa, and I think it's high time we begin to deal with those challenges.
I do hope, and of course I'm hoping, that it wouldn't be just another talk shop, but for all the participants, would go back to our various economies and actually seek to implement some of the things that we have actually discussed here. If it is that we are going to exploit the blue ocean, it should be done in a sustainable manner so that we do not degrade our ocean as much as we have done some of our land resources.
Afrexim is very well prepared. There's a lot of research and thinking going on there, which is focused primarily on Africa and African businesses and infrastructure. These are some of the takeaways. The speakers have been quite good. They've highlighted a lot of the issues which are on the front burners in Africa. And there are also solutions which they have proffered, and it makes it quite a useful seminar this time around.
After 3 days of keynote speeches, panel discussions and deliberations, it's now time for the annual general meeting of Afrexim Bank. Outgoing Chairman Denny Kayaya kicks off the event with opening remarks.
The fact that we are once again gathered here today to celebrate another vibrant year in the life of the bank is a reaffirmation of the soundness of the decision of the shareholders to entrust the stewardship of the bank in the hands of Dr. Orama, who has successfully steered the bank through what has been an economically challenging environment.
Afrexim Bank President Benedict Orama formally presents a report on the bank's activities for the 2015 financial year. Following this is a shareholders' meeting in a closed session.
Your bank is truly living its vision of being the trade finance bank for Africa, with estimates showing that its financings in the past few months account for close to 30% of the trade finance flows to its member countries. We are proud of being important agents of change under current conditions of market failure. The counter-cyclical trade liquidity facility intervention has therefore tremendously improved the perceived relevance of the bank among the member states, who have as a result rallied to the bank's appeal for a shared responsibility in addressing ongoing challenges. As you are aware, we set ourselves the target of raising an amount of $500 million by the end of 2016. I'm pleased to announce that with about 6 months to go, we have achieved that goal. And based on ongoing discussions with several potential investors, some of whom are here with us, we expect additional investments in the coming months. The bank shareholders' funds have risen from $920 million in December 2014 to about $1.5 billion in June, a growth rate of 51%. Total capital, including contingent callable capital, as at June, stood at about $2 billion. Some new shareholders have also joined the bank over the period. And I would like to use this opportunity to welcome the Republic of Congo, Brazzaville, the Dangote Group, the Seychelles Pension Fund, and Novo Bank Seychelles, to the family of the bank's shareholders. Later today, for your consideration, another round of capital increase in an amount of $1 billion to be raised largely from new shareholders. I hope you will give that proposal a favorable consideration.
The Africa Export-Import Bank was established in October 1993 with a broad objective of promoting intra-African trade. The lender continues to disburse billions of US dollars annually encouraging African countries to focus on value-added commodity exports and also to intensify industrialization efforts. Afrexim Bank has signed a $1 billion facility with the China Exim Bank to build industrial parks across the continent. Although trade among African economies lags other regions like Europe, Afrexim Bank says there has been progress and will continue to build on successes achieved so far. The bank believes the blue economy is a new economic frontier that can help African countries build economies of scale. It's encouraging island nations like Seychelles to build big regional seaports to take full advantage of the seas and oceans around it. It hopes the country's success story will encourage other African nations to follow in the same footpath. We've come to the end of the 23rd Annual General Meeting of the Africa Export-Import Bank here in the island nation of Seychelles. Thank you for watching. I'm Esther Awuni. Bye for now.
African Export